In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Dana Bates, who is an American OCMC Orthodox missionary, lives in Romania, and has built a wonderful mission in Africa. But he's going to talk to us today. We're going to have two parts to his presentation since we don't know him, but he has connections to the area. I asked him if he can tell us a little bit of his journey, both towards missionarism and towards orthodoxy, and how those two interacted together, and then to speak to us about his impact ministry for young adults in Africa. Thank you very much again for being with us.
Thank you, Father. We started, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Dana Bates, and I live in Romania. I moved there in 1999. As Father Costin knows, the name Dana in Romania is only a girl's name, only a female name, only. So I even have a case where I booked a flight from Cluj-Napoca to Prague, and Wizz Air changed my gender on the airplane ticket and made me pay to change it back to what I actually am. So I go by Daniel often in Romania. So I want to share a bit about my journey to Orthodoxy, which very much involves being in this area. I grew up in Texas. My dad was a Baptist pastor. We moved 20 times in 20 years, and it was very much the kind of fire and brimstone, gunslinging kind of Christianity. And even back as a kid, I felt like something was missing. It wasn't really about the fruit of the spirits. It was about, dogma and truth and judgment and so forth. And anyway, but I started at Gordon College in 89. And I moved from Texas. I was dumb as a stump, but I loved learning, and I studied really, really hard. It ended up being a philosophy major. Went to Oxford my senior year. And but about that time, Gordon College has a wilderness program called La Vida. Anybody heard of La Vida? La Vida means the life. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. And I started getting involved in that, I think because down in South in Texas, nature is your enemy. Kind of there's ticks and snakes and, you name it. Experiencing nature up here in the White Mountains and the Adirondacks was different. And I just fell in love with it. And I also had these really powerful spiritual experiences like nature, the beauty in nature, community, the struggle of carrying a 60-pound backpack for 2 weeks, and I just found it very, very powerful spiritually. And after I finished at Gordon College, I went to Gordon Conwell seminary, and I make that joke because at the same time as I was involved with this wilderness ministry, I was studying pretty high level in academic theology, and there was no real connection between my lived experience and what I was studying. And that really bugged me. And also, my senior year at Oxford, they teach you, it was a Christian program, but they teach you very strong critical thinking. They don't want to know what so-and-so theologian or scholar says. They want to know what you think about things. And it pushed me in a very independent direction. And that didn't transfer very well to Gordon Conwell. And so I got a lot of these kind of comments on my papers. Amazing work, but not what was asked for. And so I was planning on going into hopefully an academic career. And I think my own stubbornness and independence got me in a lot of C's and academic trouble. And about that time, my wife and I went through a backpacking trip through Europe, and we ended up in Romania. My mom's always had a heart for the poor. They moved to Romania in 1991, right after the revolution. They started an orphanage for young mothers who were kicked out of the orphanage at 18. And a lot of them had babies, and a lot of them had permanent mental problems. And so she just opened her house and hearts to these young people. My wife and I backpacked through Europe, ended up in Romania, and I remember it was a really difficult context because she'd had an automobile accident. Her leg was broken, and she was in the hospital. Back then, the hospitals were very, very rough. There were even street dogs inside the hospital in Bucharest. But even worse is that she had her leg shattered, And the doctors wanted bribes. They wanted a $6,000 bribe to operate on her, and she was in excruciating pain for a month. Finally, a Polish surgeon was in town and heard about her situation, and he did it for free. So in the midst of that, we take a trip up to the Carpathian Mountains, up to Sinaia and Brezhov, if you know those areas. And I remember going there and seeing the Carpathian Mountains, and I was just struck by them. And that night we came back to Bucharest and slept in the parents' apartment. And I woke up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., and I elbowed my wife, Brandy, and I said, Brandy, we can start a La Vida kind of program here in Romania for needy kids. And she said, that's not a dream, that's a nightmare. Go back to bed. But then, God in his providence started bringing all these amazing things together. Like, it was unbelievable how many things came together, because my wife did not want to go. Like, she was not going, but even she became convinced eventually that it's what God wanted to happen. And so in 1999, convinced a bunch of crazy Gordon College students to raise money and so forth and so forth. And I persuaded the top engineer at Project Adventure, which is the people who invented and build ropes courses. And it all came together. The top engineer in the world in this field volunteered his vacation to come with us. And in 1999, we built Romania's first ropes course, first ever. Now, I wasn't a great social scientist back then. I'm still not, but I didn't know this. But the post-communist trauma, post-communist syndrome, adventure and outdoor education and experience education was an unbelievably good fit, because communism taught learned helplessness, corruption, mistrust among people, and the process of getting young people together in the camp and doing these team building activities together, adventure activities together. One of the activities is called the human knot. You wrap all your hands together and you have to, de-knot. And people learn to trust each other for the first time in their life. They said suspicion is Romania's national disease. And it ended up being a really, really good therapy and very effective therapy for helping rebuild what they call social capital, which is the trust and trustworthiness that allow people to work together for the common good. And so we named our camp in homage to La Vida, which means the life in Spanish. We called our camp. What do you think, Father?
Viața?
Viața, that's right. Viața, there you go. So we still run the Viața program today. We take about 1,000 young people a summer through this really amazing camp where they make great commitments to God and to each other to live the way God designed life to flourish. It's still running. It's fully run by Romanian leadership now. So yeah, that's, praise God. A little bit after starting the camp program, we decided, back when I first moved to the Jiu Valley in Romania, I moved there because of a beautiful national park to do, backpacking and outdoor stuff. But the Jiu Valley, back then, how many of you seen Lord of the Rings and remember Mordor, where the orcs lived? Yeah, Mordor. That's a lot what it was like back then, because of all the coal mines and the pollution, and the river was as black as can be, and yellow sulfur in the air. It was rough. First time I knew we were moving to that area. I had never been there. I'd seen pictures of the mountains, but I didn't see the valley. And the valley was a valley, and it was really. I broke down crying when I first saw it, because I knew we were moving there, and it wasn't the little Swiss Alps or whatever. So, but we knew that's where God was calling us, and so. I say all this to say that when the kids came literally down the mountain on a chairlift, ski lift, to their communities, they were really dysfunctional. And I remember going around to schools trying to recruit young people for the camp, and there would be a teachers meeting, and there would be a room completely full of smoke and vodka bottles on the table. Okay, it's not that way now at all. The things have really, really changed for the better. But back then, it was really, really rough. And so I just thought, these kids are making these great commitments, having these beautiful experiences up on the mountain, and they come back down to this, So I felt like we had to do some kind of follow-up program to have some kind of coherence with our youth ministry. And so piece by piece, I discovered, I'm a little bit of a researcher. I have a PhD from Oxford and stuff. So I researched around a lot and found this discipline called service learning. Anybody heard of service learning? You've probably done it in school. Service learning was started by a Christian. Okay, he's not Orthodox, but all of his children became Orthodox, all of them, and they go to St. Catherine's out in San Diego. But anyway, service learning was designed by this guy. His name is Dr. Jim Kilsmeyer back in the 60s and so forth, to bring a Christ-shaped love into the classroom, into the church, into the classroom. Okay, and basically it's like you're living out acts of mercy. Okay, but instead of the priest or a leader or the teacher telling you what you should do, like pick up trash or whatever, the youth themselves actually decide together on a community burden, okay, and learn the skills to address sometimes very complex issues and burdens in their community. Our core Bible verse is Galatians 6:2. Anybody remember what that is? Bear one another's... Yes, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ, okay? So this burden bearing is at the core of our pedagogy, right? Now, and this burden bearing is the core of growth in Christ too. As we act like Christ, we grow in Christ, and that develops virtues such as compassion, charity, love, and so forth. That is theosis, you know. St. Nicholas Cabasila said that the orthodoxy consists of two things. One is participating in the holy mysteries. Okay, that's what God does to us. But the second part is, he said, is training the will for virtue. Okay, and how do we train the will for virtue? We train the will for virtue by striving to love one another. It's as simple as that. And so this is simply a process of getting young people to be agents of the kingdom in their communities. And it just so happens that developing this problem solving, this burden bearing mentality is the most important issue for community development. Okay, I did my PhD at Oxford on the conversation between Orthodox theology, the Romanian theologian Dumitru Stăniloae, and poverty and development studies. So I spent 8 years studying intensely, you know, development studies. And the upstream, the most important issue in community development, in global poverty reduction, is developing problem solvers, okay? That cliche, give a person a fish, feed them for a day, teach them to fish, feed them for a lifetime, it's kind of misleading, because what if there's no fish in your area? What if people don't like fishing? You know, the teaching people to fish is teaching people, giving them the space to become problem solvers, to become burden bearers in their community. So that's a bit about service learning, that discipline. So we built a model called IMPACT. IMPACT is an acronym for involvement, motivation, participation, action, community, teens. Okay. And little did we know that I think because of the challenges of the area, the corruption, the apathy, and so forth, we ended up developing a model. I like to call it our accident. We never planned to do it. And now it's in 50 countries around the world. It's become core programming for World Vision, which just happens to be, or at least was, the largest nonprofit in the world. In about 2008, World Vision decided to do a major pilot project in Armenia, and they invested millions of dollars in opening clubs and so forth, but a lot of the money went towards researching it, okay? Baseline studies, you know, after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years. And in terms of like the outcomes that we were trying to generate, and I can say that in one of our slogans, we're trying to develop compassionate, competent agents of change, okay? People that are burden bearers for their community. The outcome was outstanding. And so World Vision then made our model core global programming. And so just to give you one example, in Sri Lanka last year, they opened 2,500 of our youth clubs there. So yeah, it's pretty big. So we're like in 50 countries. And so what I'm trying to do now, I worked for an evangelical organization for 24 years, and called Young Life. Wonderful people, but eventually it broke down. They couldn't adjust enough to the Orthodox way. I couldn't adjust enough to, it's my independent kind of whatever way. And so we ended up splitting about 2 years ago, and I started with OCMC May 15th last year. first day of work was in Nairobi, Kenya, and me and the staff from OCMC, we traveled and met with every single bishop, every single archbishop, every single metropolitan in Kenya and Uganda. We did all this in about 10 days. It was a pretty brutal trip, but we basically shared about the vision of the model, what are the methods, what are the outcomes. I've got a really cool logic model I can show you a little bit later about the nature of the model itself. And we got them on board, and now we are replicating this impact model directly through and in partnership with the hierarchs. Yes?
Just wanted to, maybe you can share that with the group. People might not be aware that now Kenya has probably more Orthodox churches than we have in America. There was a phenomenal growth. So we're talking about a very large growth in church.
Yeah. This is really worth mentioning. So starting in the 20s and 30s, and then, later on, there was a group of African spiritual leaders who wanted a non-colonial form of Christianity, okay? So they started seeking about, they ended up working with some, flaky people and so forth for a bit, but they're well-intentioned. They wanted to have an authentic African church that wasn't part of their oppressors. The Catholics were the oppressors, the Anglican were the oppressors, and so forth. And so, understandably, they wanted to try to worship God, their liberator, not in the form of Christianity that was their enslaver. So they ended up joining with the Orthodox Church, both Uganda and Kenya, somewhat independently, both in the same seeking journey of trying to find so it's a truly indigenous movement, not imported by colonists. And so in Kenya, it's really powerful. They threw off the yoke of enslavement from the British, and the British became increasingly cruel towards them. And the area of Kenya that was where a lot of the freedom fighters and people that were willing to stand up for their freedom and the freedom of their nation, it was a completely Orthodox context. Okay, it's called the Mau Mau Rebellion, Mau Mau Revolution. You can look it up, and so what the Orthodox would do is they wouldn't actually pick up guns and shoot people, but they were supporting the revolution. They were, and so it's the idea that Orthodoxy is kind of it's controversial, but the British colonists ended up being so cruel and were torturing people, and it was just horrible. But the idea that Orthodoxy is not sometimes a revolutionary force in culture is just not true. And I'm really passionate about social change, what faith can mean for social change. Jesus knew what he was doing when he gave us 2 great commandments: love God and love your neighbor. Most youth ministry I've seen around the world either focuses on one or the other, usually just the first. And the evidence of faith is like you sing Kumbaya, you play the guitar and around the fire and you whatever. No, the evidence of faith is love. It's self-sacrificial love. It's loving like the Samaritan loved. And that's really what's behind this model. It's to have a youth ministry model that takes the second great commandment as seriously as the first. And there's very few of them out there, because most of them come from the Protestant world, and the Protestant world has this faith versus works kind of thing going on. And that's actually why service learning was rejected in the U.S., because the churches didn't want it, because it was too much works emphasis. And so the school system, public secular schools, ended up adopting the pedagogy, service learning, and they took away all the faith language, right? But then the churches just kept the language and didn't do the works, So I think it's a parable for so much of what happens in Western culture. But anyway, so we're trying to do an African-wide, starting in East Africa, movement of change agents who are going to be witnessing through and for the love of Christ for social change. And God has given us on the ground an amazing group of Africans who work directly with the Archbishop Makarios in Nairobi, Kenya. There's 2 young guys. One's a lawyer, and another one, I forget what he does. But they're phenomenal. They have their own TV station. They're the most energetic, competent people, and they are so passionate about starting a movement of this in East Africa. And So yeah, we're gonna do it, and we're gonna do it in a very low cost way. It's gonna be in direct partnership with the church, and I think it's gonna really be a great witness for the church, and I think it's gonna be actual the basis for real changes in society. So that's kind of a little bit of my spiel. Yeah, so I became Orthodox largely because my powerful experiences with the Levita program of community change, and so forth. When I started studying Orthodoxy, I felt a big old Greek word, eureka. I found it. It was like an aha experience, and never looked back. And especially the theologian Dumitru Steniloae, he's such a profound thinker, and I was just captivated by his theological vision of Trinity and beauty of nature and incarnation and all that stuff. And so decided to write a few pages on it. So what else? Yeah.
I was curious. One question is, how was the orthodoxy you found in Romania compared to the ideal orthodoxy that you studied about initially?
Well, for me, it was pretty ideal because, so when we moved there as Protestants, I didn't know anything about Orthodoxy, really. One fun fact, my one experience to it was that in seminary, I went to a interfaith conference of Orthodox Jews and Christians. And I remember my first exposure to Orthodoxy was when the Orthodox contingent did their worship module. The Jewish contingent were scandalized or shocked because they're like, this is just like first century temple worship. And the Orthodox were like, of course, it is. And that was always very provocative to me, and where our camp is, there's a tiny small monastery, like with just one monk. And even as Protestants, the monk would come out to our ropes course, and he could just see that we were trying to love kids, and he endorsed us, blessed us, and so forth, even though we weren't Orthodox. And he would even get on some of there's like one element where you put your foot in a rope noose and you swing across. And we have pictures of him in his cassock swinging across, and it was just really great. They were so warm and welcoming, and we became very good friends with this priest, Father Chokan, which means Father Hammer, and he's the godfather for my children, and we just felt loved into Orthodoxy. I mean, I was very much attracted by the theology, but I didn't experience a contradiction between the theology and the actual people, through which theology should be incarnated and so forth. So for me, it was just a very, very smooth transition. Back then, all of our donors were Protestant, and we just tried to be very transparent about our journey. And most of them stayed with us. Most of them didn't have any problem that we were becoming Orthodox. And I've got several churches in the area. You met one of the...
yeah, Brent Krugge.
Yeah. I'm presenting at his church next week. Is it okay if I also have Protestant churches supporting me?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
More the merrier.
Yeah, but they've been really happy with the journey, and and they enjoy it too because I educate them a little bit about things about Orthodoxy in a very gentle way. But it's a mutual growing journey, and so lived in this area I've even worked in the SHU. We were talking about that, which is now the Cumming Center down in Beverly, is it? Beverly, yeah. I worked in there before it was transformed. It was quite a beast then. So and this area is kind of one of our homes. My wife and I spent 15 years in the Gordon community, Gordon Conwell, more Gordon. So this is an area we come back to. This area in Santa Barbara, so we can be friends because we'll probably come back almost every year. So if my organization lets me. I'm still trying. I still don't know what I can and cannot do in my new context. So I tend to try to do what I want to do, and then what's that saying? Just do it and then ask for forgiveness. I don't do that too much, but sometimes ask for permission. Yeah. So, if you have any questions. I do have some brochures. I had some other ones like this, but I just forgot them. But I'll leave this one. But I did print out today a bunch of brochures. I haven't had time to fold them yet, but they've got all of our information, my contact information, my donation information. So I will pass these around. But ask me some questions, please.
So I'm curious on how would you adapt the model that you have in Nairobi to something that's more local here?
More local here?
How do you it sounds like that work was largely flourished because a bit of the history of Kenya, as you pointed out, their willingness to sort of embrace a new church model.
Yeah.
And that might be unique to Kenya. I've been there, by the way, once or twice.
Yeah.
It's an interesting spot. I wouldn't want to live there. I would find it hard to live there.
Yeah, me too.
But how do you see how your experience there could be used here locally?
Here in the U.S.?
Well, or in Newburyport.
So, okay, so my new boss is at OCMC, Father Rob Harlambus. Yeah. I can't say that word, that name. He and the development director, another Greek named Stephanopoulos or something. They were with me, and they saw my presentation, which was a little bit more technical than what I'm doing now. And every single time they said, this has to come to the U.S. He said, once Africa is stable, we're going to work on getting people trained, either come to Romania or both, all of that. Because it's not just about, it's about the process of salvation itself, okay? What I say is that, you don't got to do impact, but if you're not doing something strangely similar to this, you're not helping the kids grow in God, because growth in God is a growth in neighbor love. Okay, so there's a big interest in this coming to the U.S. So I think it's a matter of time, and I think we're about a year away from getting things pretty stable in Kenya and East Africa. We're in a 3-year capacity building process. We've already gone through year 1. We're trying to develop the African brothers there as trainers, so that they can then won't be dependent upon us at all. They, a little bit of guidance, but they have the capacity to open new clubs when and where and how they want. And what's really amazing about this is that because it's done in the Orthodox Church, there's the human infrastructure, there's the space infrastructure. So it literally costs almost nothing, so it can really replicate. So
is the core actionable aspect of this the rope course?
No, those got nothing. You don't need a ropes course. So the ropes course is the Viazza program. That's a summer program. This Impact is a standalone program. You could, it'd be great if you could do a ropes course, but you don't need anything. You need physical space where if it rains, you're going to be dry. And let me show you. I've got a logic model that'll explain the structure of it. It'll be very quick. I presented this at a big conference on service learning in Buenos Aires, so there's some references to our post-communist background. Because like in Latin and South America, they still think that Marxism is kind of cool. What's that?
Oh, yeah, that's
Okay, so this is our. I don't know if you can see this. this is our logic model, okay? On the left are our methods or inputs, okay? These are the things that we train people in. The first one is games, like fun team building games. There's so much science now that shows that people learn better when there's play element brought in, you know, so, but I won't go into that. The second part is stories or narrative. So as a Christian youth ministry, there's a lot of people around the world doing service learning, okay? But we want to do service learning in a distinctly Christian fashion. So, you know, we love one another. Why? Because he first loved us, right? So this story explains the why of the service, okay? So that we're shepherding young people towards an explicit embrace of the church and the kingdom, okay? This one down here is loving leaders. If you don't have a leader that truly loves the kids and investing in them, these great methods will fall flat on their face, okay? But the last one is the service learning projects, and I already explained about that. So, so these are the methods or the inputs, right? What we're trying to have happen, right? These are the outcomes, and it's character development, competence, and contribution. And I published a paper in the International Journal of Service Learning, basically arguing that these three are interdependent. In the literature, academic literature on service learning, there's like about 100 different outcomes, and I realized that can't be. That's not useful. That's too much, you know. So I cut out on pieces of paper all the outcomes they mentioned and studied that for like a week, and realized that all of those can be boiled down to these 3 C's: character, competence, and contribution. So character is the intention and desire, it's the disposition to do good, okay? But the desire to do good isn't the same thing as actually doing good in a concrete situation. So through the service project, that puts them in direct contact with reality, with concrete situations through which they have to learn skills and knowledge. I'll give you an example. Like in Romania, a lot of times there's a school, they don't have a crosswalk or what's called a zebra or speed bumps near the school, and kids get hit a lot. Okay, so kids have done this all over Romania. They actually work with the public officials, the police, the mayor's office. They petition and they get speed bumps to protect lives put near their schools. So the project itself comes from the young people's experience. In my community, there's a lot of old people, Batrun, who are very, very lonely. Very, very lonely. And so the kids do projects to love these elderly. They organize parties for them. So it's not just like material things. It's whatever burden, spiritual, relational, addiction, that the young people identify in their own experience, and they learn the life skills. They learn project management skills, they learn budgeting skills, they learn socio-emotional intelligence, real life skills that help them get a job and be effective, okay? And love. So I'll give you one more example of a really powerful project. In Romania in about 2007, 2008, for a period of time, all over Romania, there were these, they called them spice shops. They're ethnobotanical drugs. They're drugs that weren't technically illegal yet, but nonetheless were addictive and were destroying kids' lives. Okay, so for a period of time, like 6 months, they're setting these up near schools, and kids were getting addicted, and it was like really, really dangerous. Most places in Romania shut them all down. There was one city named Constanța on the Black Sea, and the mayor there was like a madman, really notoriously nuts. He was getting bribes for these spice shops, and he didn't shut them down. And one of the girls in the Impact Club there, whose family was quite rich, they owned the best, most elegant restaurant in the whole big city of Constanța. She's like, look, man, look, friends, I was addicted to these things and almost lost my life because of them. Let's do a project and try to get these things shut down. And so they said, yeah, let's do that. And so they went to the mayor's office, like all 15 or 20 of them, and the mayor pretty much ran them out. Okay, they went back and cried a little bit, and the leader encouraged them, and they realized, they started brainstorming, let's do a petition. So they ended up doing a petition. They got about 7,000 signatures. Went back to the mayor's office, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And then they go back and they're starting to get a little upset. And so they decided to organize a march. And they organized an illegal march with about 10,000 people. And they made these banners. Let me forward, because I have one of the pictures I have. With about 10,000 people. I've got, it'll be here in 1 second. And they actually, I don't know if you see that picture there. That's them marching with huge banners. It says "Nuci da viața pe 10 lei."
Don't give up your life for $10.
Or no, that's like
$2.
$2, yeah, $2. And so they marched through town, an illegal march, but the police weren't going to, arrest a bunch of kids, And at the end of it, they had a little podium prepared and a loudspeaker, and the mayor was there because it was creating quite a commotion. And the girl who was addicted, she's a beautiful young lady, she got up on the podium and gave a speech. And she said, "Mayor, I can see you out there. Said, you need to shut down these spice shops. Every place in Romania, I shut them down. You need to have the decency to do this." And she said, "They almost took my life, and if you don't shut them down, you can't eat at my parents' restaurant anymore." And
how old were these kids?
15.
Yeah, 15.
15, 16, And within the week, they were all shut down, bulldozed. So praise God. One of the slogans of the early church was, "Great are the achievements of faith." And I love that. And that's what I think we need to reclaim, that faith gives us energy and courage and the virtues in order to be real agents of change for Christ's love, to be the hands and heart and feet of Christ. And so that's what's really behind this vision, is that real love means real action. And it means a learning process.
Just as a question, so you describe that whole model that grew to thousands of clubs in Thailand, I believe. And then, so what is your current connection to that ministry now that you're under OCMC and work mostly in Romania and Africa? Is the same model applied still in those clubs? What's the difference between?
Yeah, so before COVID, everything was different. World Vision was paying us really, really good money. I've got a very good team of people. We have about 20 people on staff, and I invented the model and the approach, but we together collaboratively developed so much amazing curriculum. World Vision was giving us a $15,000 intellectual property fee to use our curriculum just in one country. And they were giving us huge training fees because our trainers are absolutely amazing. I'm a horrible trainer. I'm not good. But I've got a very good team. I'm good at getting people on board and whatever. But I've got a very, very good set of trainers. We've been fine-tuning our training for 20 years. We had 120 years of experience implementing impact that we brought to Africa. So our training. I got to tell you a funny story. So the Archbishop was really, really gracious. He opened up a seminary to us, and so forth. But he didn't understand the process. This is very much a workshop, a hands-on workshop where people are doing problem solving and activities and so forth. And it's not like a lecture where you can just add more people, okay? But the Archbishop, bless him, didn't understand that. So he was so excited about us being there. He decided, and he announced this in front of all of the students, all of the deans, everybody. He announced that he's shutting down the seminary for a whole week, and that all of the students, all 120 extra of them, are invited to participate in our training. And my Romanians were horrified because it would have destroyed it. It's not a lecture where you just add people. It's like small group work and so forth. And I had the great, wonderful task of calling the Archbishop outside of the room with all of his students and everybody there and saying, "Sorry, Archbishop, you can't do that." It was really, really, but he's such a humble, amazing man that, there was about 45 seconds of very, very uncomfortable silence. But he's like, "Okay, then we'll do it." So and we came up with a compromise that ended up working even better that we invited all the third-year seminary students to stay in the training, and through that we got better representation throughout Kenya. And so God worked through this, even this difficulty, to come up with a better outcome than what we've had before. So that was interesting, though.
Now, you said you also have a short video for us.
Yes, 4 minutes. We can do that now if you want. Yeah, if any of you are like interested in pedagogy, experiential education, I can send you this article that I published. I worked it really emerged out of decades of debates among our staff about, okay, we know we love service learning, we know it's a practice that works, we know, but what's it for? And some would say it's for character development, and some would say, no, it's for the actual community change. Or some would say, no, it's for the competency, because that's measurable, and that's what the educational system cares about, and so forth. And I heard that for debates for years, and I was like, there's something not right about this. And I just, as the founder, the inventor of the model, I tasked myself with finding a solution for this, a higher, transcendence, and really came up with this approach called the three C's, interdependent. You can't develop virtue without striving, without action, and so forth. So it's very much virtue theory, if you're into that. So you get all these pieces together, and then you get it's a dumb little silly. Okay, let me give you the video. This video is very fresh. It was just, the final edit was just about a week ago. About a dear friend who lives in Beverly has a studio there, and he's won a lot of awards. He was given very rough footage. Keep that in mind. Very rough footage from cell phones in Kenya, Uganda, and stuff. So this is what he came up with. You okay?
Receive cordial greetings from Nairobi here in Kenya. My name is Joshua Kimani.
I work with that Joshua every day. He's a lawyer, and every weekend he does pro bono work for the poor. Just amazing. I can't say enough about him.
My name is Jocelyn Mamboy.
Hello, I'm Dana Bates.
My name is James Mwangi.
This is youth from Uganda, and we are here on a theme of impacting East Africa.
Hello, I'm Maria, working with Youth Horizons Foundation and Impact Program for more than 20 years.
We have been undergoing a week-long training with the Romanians, teaching us about how we can impact our communities. But it is time for us to make the next big move for the Church of Africa. How do we do this? How do we make it happen? That is where impact comes in.
Impact proved to be very useful and successful. We're now in around 45 countries.
Actually, the impact model has been widely accepted, not only by the Orthodox Christian Association of Kenya, but by also other youth ministries in Uganda and in Kenya.
We are here learning about this impacting East Africa, and soon we're going to form impact clubs in our own individual churches.
And right now we're training 44 leaders in the Orthodox Church from all over East Africa. We have big plans, hopefully God-inspired plans, to start all East Africa movement of youth work.
Impacting East African community will help us and help.
That guy there speaking, he's a Maasai warrior. You guys anybody not know what the Maasai are? They're the tribes that, their initiation rite is to kill a lion, singularly. So we have 2 Maasai warriors that are going to be impact leaders. And it's pretty cool.
Our communities to grow by organizing the clubs.
I believe Impact is successful because it really combines spiritual formation objectives with community development objectives.
So, for the first time, a model that is not only able to fit within one, our culture, two, our context, the economical context of the situation, because here things are very different.
Young people get together and guided by leaders, and they serve and love their communities. Youth decide on a community service project, and they learn all sorts of life skills like project management, budgeting, and so forth in order to meet a concrete need in the community.
I'm very passionate about this program because it actually empowers young people to have their voice heard and to make significant change in community.
I just have to say a word about her. Her name is Maria. She's been with us for 23 years, and her only job for 23 years has been impact. And she's a genius. She's a genius, and so she's my. We wouldn't be, even though I invented the model, we wouldn't be where we are without her, and some others, but especially her. So she has a special place in my heart.
It's all over the world.
The interesting thing about impact is that it's actually the young people that decide the projects themselves. It's not coming from a leader or whatever. So their ownership is extremely high.
We are seeing the impact model as a model that is able to replicate not only in the Orthodox Church, which we intend to do in all parishes in the country, but also in other churches for our friends. We have our friends in the different youth ministries, like the Catholics, the Presbyterians, the Anglicans. All of them, after seeing the kind of impact that we are going to cause through the impact model,
We have had something impactful in our lives that we'll go back and even share with the rest of the youth in Uganda.
We just thank God that it's been as successful as it's been. We're thankful to His Eminence, Archbishop Makarios, for hosting us.
This seminar is for us a sign that the youth are very important, not for today only, but also for our future activities as one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church.
With God's help and yours, we'll continue this mission.
by supporting the impact program that is being spearheaded by Dana Bates, we're going to cause real change in Africa. This is a small parish which has no ability to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But the impact model luckily is the one thing that is going to blend within their culture, within their context, and by the grace of God, they are going to see the light of Christ.
They dance so much there, even in the liturgy.
Please continue praying for us, and we'll continue praying for you. You are deeply close in our hearts, and we hope that you are going to support us and make a change for the young people of Africa.
The Archbishop, he is the real deal. He is a true. I've never seen a servant leader like him. Like really, he's got so many burdens and responsibilities for paying free salary, all these crazy difficult projects, and he's just, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. So, our question for the future is, how can we get involved and partner with you? I mean, obviously, at some point in the future, we'll be very interested when Impact comes to America to participate. But what can we do now? How can we both support the ministry and learn from it? What's the best way, you think, to continue this?
Well, even in the limited weeks I've been in the U.S., I feel like there's been a special relationship with the Romanian Orthodox churches because there is that bond. So I would ask you, Father, if you would want to help network with Romanian churches, but also too, I don't know, just pray and definitely could use some financial support. What I'm raising money for is actually to not for myself, really. I had a debate with my bosses in OCMC, and they kind of thought that I was going to work directly with all these priests and youth leaders all over East Africa. And I was like, I can't do that. I don't know the culture, and so forth. So basically, for this to work, these two guys, this guy Joshua and another guy James, they want to be the ones that are going to shepherd this movement forward. So what they're going to do is they're going to actually travel all over and visit the clubs. We know from 25 years experience doing this that if you just leave them to themselves, it'll die. It needs some TLC, some loving support, site visits, and so forth. And so it's a very, very inexpensive model, but it doesn't mean no cost. So I'm trying to raise money for the travel costs and small salary for the two guys that are going to be leaders. So.
Would you be would we be raising this money through OCMC? Do you have a separate fundraising effort, or how does this work?
Is the camera on?
We can
I'm kidding.
we can finish this so that we can. Why don't we finish the transmission and talk
Yeah.
freely a little bit? Thank you very much.